Hey folks, hope you're all doing well. Got a short one probably today. I'm going to be talking about a little quirk I've noticed with sticky traps, in that obviously, as I've talked about many times before, well, this is something that I guess I more elaborate in demo reviews and things like that, but I'm sure I've talked about it on this channel prior. It is the fact that as a demo, a lot of the time that you're looking to set up sticky traps, i.e. in those positions where you are expecting to be conceding space to the other team, usually some type of disadvantage, such as player disadvantage, uber disadvantage, things of that nature. In times like that, you're looking to set up sticky traps, but where to trap is kind of a question you have to decide. And typically the advice I've given is you want to set up as aggressive of traps as you can get away with, i.e. if you can trap the doors, then that's good, because, you know, doors are very, very natural choke points. And if you watch a demo like Habib, for example, who just has really good reaction time on those debts, he'll just have sticks on the door and just find a kill, because someone needs to get through at some point, whether it be a soldier jumping through or a scout jumping through. In any case, if you can det that correctly, then you're in the money and you have a free kill there. Now you can have more passive traps set up, things that aren't on the doorway but a little ways further in. And the sort of, I guess, benefit to that is they're a lot harder to clear, because obviously teams are going to be on red alert when they're trying to get through a choke point, and less so when they're already through, or rather they might have other things on their plate. Now that can work both ways. I mean, if you have like a passive trap set up, then sometimes if a team pushes in, then they just straight up will they'll have forced you out by the time that they reach the trap, and you can't really spot it well because, you know, you have to leave. And a lot of new demos do love to stick around for that trap, hoping that it'll get a kill and end up dying because of it. So there's that factor. You can't really spot it. And B, if your entire team is out, the other team has nothing to do except for spot for traps. So stuff like that can paradoxically be a lot easier to clear sometimes. But the big benefit of more passive traps is that they're very, very easy to set up, because you can do so from extremely uncommitted positioning, very safe positioning. So it's better than nothing in that regard. But again, you're usually working with that trade-off of the better traps you can get, the more aggressive, the more on the doors, sometimes even a little ways in the doorway, in the case of, for example, like a gully wash choke, or there's just plenty of examples of traps that you can set a little ways further than the actual door itself to really catch a team off guard. Stuff like that is, I don't know how I didn't see that trap. That's definitely on me. And that carpet was just sitting there the whole time. Right. So, here we are getting back capped again. I was talking about, usually the more aggressive, the better. However, something that I've noticed is that, another factor to sticky traps is kind of like how, I guess, hidden they are, right? Or how tricky they are, in a sense, where there are going to be certain traps. In fact, even the one I set right now, which for some reason did only 32 damage with 4 stickies, which is remarkable. But it's a little too late to pause at this point and demonstrate. But you notice that it wasn't on the door itself. It was on a window next to the door. So if someone was just clearing the door, which is a relatively common thing to do, you clear the door and then you might be done clearing traps, there's a chance they miss that, and then you get a ton of value. Now, that sort of factor of, how hidden a sticky trap is, has weird kind of implications across different divisions, in that in lower divs, you can get a lot more value, relatively speaking, out of your traps being more hidden and out of them getting uncleared, right? And even traps that aren't like particularly hidden, but just on the door, the teams are not going to be as consistent at clearing because they're just worse, right? They're newer. You need to die to a bunch of uncleared traps to really start to internalize which doors and those timings that you really need to get through. So yeah, it's just kind of a factor or a fact of life that those newer players are not going to be clearing things as well. So a like hidden trap might just be completely unchecked, and it's just a matter of if a high value target walks over it and you get that kill. But on the flip side as well, at least in like early to middling divisions, once teams start clearing traps, like they're really clearing them, and traps on doorways and things like that, you really need to just trust your debt. If and I'll see, that was a prime example actually. You see, I set up a passive trap there when I really didn't need to. I could have just had a trap on the doorway, and if my reaction was fast enough, which in that case it totally is reasonable to just kill that scout, and then suddenly their push sucks. So this is a good example of, you know, when a passive trap, you don't really benefit from it. Because by the time anyone actually walked over where my trap was set, I just really needed to be out, and I couldn't really spot it realistically, so it gives me a worse debt, things like that. So yeah, this was a good example of a trap that was too passive. But that's not necessarily the focus of today's video, because I want to talk about these sort of division differences. And yeah, once teams really start to clear traps, those just basic traps are not going to work as successfully as they might even in higher divisions. And it's a weird kind of paradox, because you would expect really good teams to be you'd expect the really good teams to be better in like every way and not be getting caught out by just basic traps on doorways, right? But it's not necessarily the case. And the reason for that is, I'll say twofold. One is that traps suddenly matter, like the timing matters a lot more than the position, I'll say, or at least the position matters somewhat, but timing is a huge deal in that. And one example I can think of, this was some seasons ago. It was actually shortly after Snakewater got updated, and one of the updates they made was in lower, the connecting area between mid and second. They made the rafters all like flat. So, oh, there's my loadout that I pulled up in this demo. I guess I switched items. Maybe I'm on Iron Bomber now, or maybe I just switched to sword so I could build. We'll see. So, right. This new Snakewater lower, you have rafters on the ceiling, and in prior versions, those were clipped for projectiles pretty much as they appear. As in, on those rafters, you could set a sticky trap on the ceiling and have it be kind of obscured. They changed that so that there's basically an invisible ceiling that brings it all down to the same level. If you're playing Snakewater and you shoot stickies at the ceiling, you'll know exactly what I mean. I know the description here is a little odd. But one of the side effects of that was that the lamp in lower, the wide lower door leading into 2, which is a door that teams generally choose as their dry push door, well, that reduced kind of ceiling made it a lot easier to hide stickies in this lamp. It was a very wordy way to put that there was a new trap there that was pretty potent, because you can hide stickies in a place that teams like to dry push. Now, we're talking about timing of things. I was playing against a team, and I think we lost mid or something. They were going to be pushing second, or at least they were going to be pressuring second. But the point being, that I was able to set that trap lower very, very early, and then I rotated over to Saw to set a trap that I know they could hear me setting, and I was telling my team, like, I'm gonna drop them lower, because this was a high enough level that I knew that the other team, they would hear something like that and adjust to that and then go lower and end up getting caught out. Now, you see in like invite teams and things like that, a lot of the fights being taken are on more marginal advantages. Obviously, you have some of the same like huge advantages and things like that, but if everyone on your team is really good, then you can take advantage of smaller and smaller things, right? And benefit off of even thinner margins. So let's say a player dies, just one player dies, and they respawn in 10 seconds. Well, there's a timer for how long you have that player advantage. It's a relatively meager player advantage as well if it's just a soldier or a scout. But better teams are obviously going to take better advantage of that. Likewise, well, I can think of even a game that I casted last night as invite playoffs are commencing. Invite playoffs are commencing. And in fact, I think that grand finals are going to be this Sunday. So tune in if you're interested. I will be casting that. But it was Froyo against Moneyballs. And Froyo got a kill on a demo on last and converted that into just a full round in like 20 seconds, which is just ridiculous. Obviously, having a demo kill into the other team's last is really, really nice. But oftentimes teams are just going to convert that into like ad or something like that, or get some cap time in an exchange situation, play off that advantage later, maybe convert another kill, things like that. But being able to convert it into a full round like so quickly was definitely impressive. But point being, the better the team is, the more they can take advantage of things like that. So teams get used to trying to take advantage of those small windows of opportunity. And as a result, they're not going to be clearing traps as readily, at least in those types of situations. Obviously, if you're, well, even in the case, sorry, I hit my mic there. I don't know if that was loud. Even in the case of like a dry push where you're absolutely expecting doors to be trapped, and you are expecting that you're expecting doors to be trapped, and you're expecting that the other team is going to be spamming you out, trying to prevent you from taking the point for free without using your Uber. In cases like that, obviously you want to clear traps and do all that, but you still want to do things quickly, because anytime it's ad or Uber advantage and you have Uber, that ad is dwindling. So if you have 50% and you take too long to push into a point, then guess what? The other team is going to have Uber for the next point, and suddenly things even out, and you can no longer take more space. Versus if you take a point really, really quickly, then you might still have ad into the next point, and you can transition into that point with, if you have like a surplus of advantage, you can still dry push that without using, or you could just pop through into the next point, things like that. But point being, the faster you go when you have an advantage, the more you can milk out of that advantage, or squeeze out of that advantage. Because I know milk also has other uses in competitive TF2 regarding Ubers. So yeah, it's kind of paradoxical in that way, and that's why sometimes these high-level teams will still get caught out or lose a player to a very basic trap, just because you're so used to going at such a fast pace that if a door happens to be trapped at the right time, you're just going to risk it, right? Because if you were to take the caution of a door potentially being trapped every single time, for example, as like a roamer getting through a flank door, excuse me. If you were to take the caution of that door being trapped every single time, then you would be wasting a lot more opportunities than saving yourself, because 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be trapped, and you taking the extra few seconds to verify that might be valuable seconds to that fight that you're playing on really thin margins, right? So yeah, it's kind of an interesting sort of conundrum there, where as a team, take advantage of like thinner and thinner advantages and more temporary and what's the word I'm looking for? More temporary and not transient advantages, you are simultaneously kind of opening yourself up to getting caught out by more basic sticky traps. So it is interesting how the timing of things and just finding out when to set traps, where to set them, and things like that to catch your opponents off guard can change as your opponents get better. Because, yeah, the just trapping the door and trying to get the kill with your reaction time is often the best way to do things. At a lot of levels, actually. Anyway, I think that's all from me. I think this ended up being longer. I was expecting this to be like 10 minutes. Let's see. Okay, 15. Not too bad. But yeah, if you like this kind of content, then feel free to subscribe. If you haven't, YouTube will then recommend your stuff to me, recommend my stuff to you more often, I'm pretty sure, as well as liking the video, stuff like that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, see you all next time.